The Atheist Debates Patreon project presents Calling Christianity a Myth is Offensive. Hey everybody, this is going to be a kind of two topics in one because we're going to talk a little bit about myth and we're going to talk a little bit about offense all in one video that's probably not going to be all that long. I went to a dictionary specifically to look up what it said about myth, and that's going to catch some people by surprise because my view on dictionaries is that they describe usage. They are not authorities. They are not prescriptivists. They do not say, here's what this word means and has to mean. It's, here are the different usages for this term. And the first listing was a collection of myths. This was for mythology. A collection of myths, especially one belonging to a particular religion or cultural tradition. And the example that appears directly underneath there is a book discussing Jewish and Christian mythology. And yet this whole thing started because someone tried to point out, I hadn't even referred to Christianity as a myth in this case, but had gotten close to it. And they were trying to explain that calling Christianity a myth is offensive. And I really don't care. But there's a reason I don't care. So I took a comparative religions course in high school. I also took a mythology course in high school. Both of these were electives. And yes, it was a very long time ago, but I remember both of those classes very well and very fondly. And I think that both of those classes, I think we should stop having them as electives and just make them a compulsory course. It teaches people so much. The comparative religions course I've talked about many times because it was kind of eye-opening to look at all these other religions and go, gosh, how did they all get it so wrong? And, myself as a young Christian Southern Baptist kid, I'm glad that I was born into the right one. And it never even occurred to me how preposterous that sounded at the time. But many years later it did, and it stuck well. And the mythology course we took only focused on classical mythology, the ancient Greek and Roman myths and things like that. It was a very simple semester course, and it talked about myths generally, but then we specifically focused on those. Now, myth literally does not mean true or false. Myth doesn't make any assessment of the truth or falseness of it classically. It's a folklore genre. If you go to Wikipedia and look up myth or mythology, you'll see it list that it's about folklore narratives like origin myths and things like that. And the modern kind of pejorative usage of myth, which carries with it this notion that the thing you're talking about is not true, it's not objectively true, it's not verifiable, and it even goes further, I think, to suggest these are the things we all know nobody believes or nobody should believe. Well, I have some friends or acquaintances who are pagans who claim that they literally believe in the myths that I learned about in my mythology class. And I remember saying on one of the shows years ago that, oh, nobody believes in, Zeus anymore. And then immediately I got an email from someone who did. It seems to those of us who were raised in modern kind of Western Christian families, that anybody who claims to believe in Zeus or Thor or whatever outside of the Marvel movies is engaged in kind of like mythology, and they're trying to make a myth seem true again. But the truth is, the pejorative usage of the word myth that is used as like a dagger to say, that's a myth, but this is truth, comes from religions like Christianity, and predominantly, I would say Christianity, trying to label other beliefs as false. They need some way to distinguish their package of beliefs from all of those other thousands upon thousands of packages of beliefs that are out there. Now, saying something is a myth no longer applies specifically to religions. It goes beyond that to pretty much anything we think someone shouldn't believe. But that's curiously where the offense comes from. Christians, or people of modern religions that are popular, they changed how a term was used to specifically make it a pejorative. And then they want to object when that pejorative is used to describe accurately their sacred beliefs. Now, we can talk about how offense is taken and not given, but they're doing the giving and the taking in this case. Now, briefly on offense, your offense at something has no impact on what others can or should do, unless you can demonstrate some real problem on behalf of which you're offended. Offensive slurs marginalize people for traits that are beyond their control. They make it as if this trait that you have is a negative when it's not, and therefore we can dismiss and marginalize you and everyone like you for having this non-negative trait that we're going to consider negative. That's where that type of slur type language comes into as problematically offensive. Offensive actions and ideas are those that prey on our sense of dignity and justice, or things that we value, like when the weak are preyed upon. But offense only matters to those who share the foundation of that offense. My offense doesn't matter to someone who doesn't share that foundation, and vice versa, which is why you have to be taught and convinced to become offended. There has to be some personal investment into that, and some sort of emotional wounding that requires a personal connection to that. This is why people are often hurt when we speak negatively about their religion. They have invested themselves into this religion. This religion becomes the core of their identity. If in fact this religion were not true, it says something about them as a person, and that's why they take it personally and are offended if we mock or belittle or point out the truth about their religion. And it's the same way that, for example, someone with a substance abuse problem is offended if we were to stage an intervention, the people that cared about them, to say, we believe you have a problem. They're going to be offended because this is a personal attack, when there's nothing negative about what we're trying to do in our sense of assessing the situation. We see someone who we are convinced has a problem. Several of us are convinced of it. We care for them. We love them. We would like to see them get help. And all we're trying to do is express that. But that doesn't matter. They're going to be offended. And it's in many cases because it could be because we're all wrong. Maybe that person doesn't have a problem. Or it could be that we're right and this person is in denial and is hurt and doesn't want to be called out, doesn't want to be put on blast. It's like, for example, just to keep it topical, George Santos, currently in the House of Representatives, is probably offended when I call him a liar. But it's the truth, and I don't care about his offense because I don't feel the need to protect liars. So what we have here in the case of myth and calling Christianity a myth or calling Judaism a myth, the usage of myth as a colloquialism for false, as a rough synonym of fiction or dubious or antiquated story that those other people believe, is the direct result of people trying to prop up their own preferred myth over others. They tried to draw a line. Oh, all of those other origin stories, those are myths, but this one is true. That's why it's offensive to them, because it exposes the lie that they built. Now, not necessarily the modern Christians didn't build it, but they keep adding to it, and it's become their tradition as well. This, we're not a myth. They've gone so far as to, well, Christianity is not a religion. It's not a religion. It's a personal relationship with the creator of the universe. So we had myth, which was the word we used to describe origin stories, particularly sacred origin stories of various religious traditions. But Christians, who seem to get offended over any attempt to point out that they haven't met their burden of proof, along with some other modernists, have decided, oh, all of those other origin stories are myths. We have the truth. And then we say, so now we'll just lump you guys together as religions. And no. Christianity is not a religion. It is a personal relationship with the creator of the universe. They're wanting to play this game of let's continue to use new terms or adjust the terms we're using to distinguish our particular religious myth from all of those other religious myths out there. And they're doing it with wordplay because they can't do it with evidence. That's why it's offensive to them. It exposes the lie that they built. Christianity is a myth alongside Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, and every other religion. It would technically be a myth in most usages or in some usages, even if it were true. But it hasn't demonstrated that truth. It just tried to steal credibility by discrediting other myths, by saying, nope, here's where the line is. We're on this side of it. Oh, here's the myth spectrum. Boom. Everything on this side is myth and the Christianity is over here. Here's the religion spectrum. Everything on this side is religion. Christianity is over here. It attempts to steal credibility. And the same thing happens in other aspects too. Creationists try to steal credibility by attempting to discredit or dismiss science. They want to poke holes in evolutionary models because in their mind, if evolutionary models have holes, then Christianity's creation myth wins, except that's not at all true. Creationism doesn't get a pass and doesn't become more true or rational just because you found out that some other model was wrong. Creationism, Christian creationism, the young earth Christian creationism isn't more credible whether you debunk old earth Christian creationism or evolution. So what's your preferred myth? Do you believe it's actually true? Can you demonstrate what's actually true? Myth could be any religious story. Now, I'm in favor of words, as I said, having usage, and I'm not a prescriptivist. So if we want to use the more colloquial myth as something that's not objectively true, I mean, if we stick with the classical definition of myth, then all religions are myths, whether they're true or not. But if we want to say that myth only applies to those things that aren't objectively true, I'm fine with that. And in that case, Christianity is still a myth, and whether you're offended by that doesn't matter at all. See you next time.